Delay while we're looking for some missing committee members. (7:03). I'm going to call the special meeting of the Board of Supervisors to order at this time. And roll call is completed. We have, I believe, all members present. Is that correct?
Yes, you could ask Rick Otino to turn his camera on.
And please, Rick Otino, if you can hear, turn your camera on. So before we start public comment, I just want to make the statement. I am limiting the comment tonight to 30 minutes. The supervisors have had 2 months, well beyond 2 months, to listen to the input, both for and against this ordinance. And its amended latest edition has been out for over 2 weeks. So we're going to give folks a half hour to speak their opinions. I would ask that you consider, if you're standing next to someone who has not been able to comment on any of the previous meetings, to maybe consider giving them your slot. I would also ask you to consider, even though you would have 2 minutes of allotted time to speak, that you would consider, if you're just going to reinforce things that supervisors have heard over and over again, that you would consider just maybe stating that you do support or oppose the ordinance because of those. That way we would be able to have many more testify. The other thing I'm going to say is we can allow no applause or disturbing behavior this evening. We have a jury in session and the floor immediately above us. And if we don't honor that, well, we'll have to terminate the public comment early. All that said, I think I've covered everything that I intended to, so at this time we'll start with the public comment, and John Allegro will bring him to the podium.
Thank you. David Macklin, City Hudson, address, correct? Yeah, no. I appreciate you letting us have a comment tonight. Unfortunately, I've been more than happy to stay at home and knowing that the county was run well without what I perceive to be unconstitutional, illegal, and effectively immoral ordinances in the city and the county. It's very disturbing, and I consider it irresponsible. I consider what you're doing is violating your oath of office. Let's be clear. I come from an industry background. I've been in civil rights for 30 years. What you're doing is nothing more than watering down and destroying our civil rights. The masks are ineffective if you're not sick. If you're sick, maybe 20% effective based on 30 years of research. It's irrefutable. There's nothing with that. For now, we've dealt with this since March. Social distancing, masks, closing down places, bigotry against churches, which is what it amounts to, is done nothing to stop what you're doing here. This is very disturbing. I've seen many times where people with disabilities have been humiliated in businesses and in stores for fear of somebody coming around and shutting them down. I know people that have been out of work now for 6 months. They can't feed their kids. They're a threat of being evicted. There are some that are a threat of losing their houses. You've got people that with suicide rates have gone up everywhere. This is all easily statistics found. Depression rate has increased. You're not saving anybody's lives here. You're destroying lives. And what you're all doing here is violating your oath. And any of you who've been in the military, this should be especially disturbing. You have a choice. You have to look hard in the mirror. This is not about you. You have to choose between slavery and freedom. It's that simple. Thank you.
The first online speaker we have is Rebecca Hagel. Rebecca, it looks like you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm from Hudson, and I just want to say that you were all elected to make difficult decisions for the betterment of the community. As elected officials, we call on you to lead and to lead with science and facts. We watch our COVID numbers rapidly climb each day. Nurses and doctors are begging us to do something. We cannot rely on personal responsibility because it has been proven in the numbers that it's not happening. We saw a protest today outside the government center of a group who call themselves Activated Patriots, wearing no masks, some wearing shirts that say, "No masks, don't ask." These people do not speak for the community. They may be loud and obnoxious, but I'm asking you to drown out that noise and listen to the experts. Do the right thing for the community and do the right thing for the medical community and vote yes on this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Next up, the boardroom.
Hi, I would just like to warn the American people out of sympathy and benevolence that the ships of socialism, communism, Marxism, and dictatorship have reached the shores of America. They have become anchored upon our shores and in secrecy have sent armies to spread their beliefs and destruction to our people. Why do we allow this? Our country was founded upon freedom. That is why we have prospered as a nation and why we will continue to do so if we secure and support those rights. In the past 8 or so months of COVID-19, I have seen the people's rights be silenced and extinguished. The right to attend church, the right to freedom of speech, and the right for the people to peaceably assemble, and so much more. For as Benjamin Franklin once said, any society that gives up a little liberty to gain a little security will deserve neither and lose both. If we continue to give up our liberty to gain security during this pandemic, we will, as Benjamin Franklin said, deserve neither and lose both. Security is wonderful. It makes you feel safe and protected. But liberty is so much more. Liberty is what our ancestors have fought for and died for. Liberty has given the United States prosperity and favor among the world. And so I ask you this: is more restrictions, more ordinances, and more rules really necessary during this pandemic? If you continue placing restrictions on the American people, we will slowly wilt and die, but not from the pandemic. For we Americans prosper on liberty and freedom. I believe that history is prophecy. For example, the 1918 flu pandemic, the pandemic that killed around 25 to 50 million people worldwide. An author by the name of John Barry published a book on this pandemic in 2004. He said, "Those in authority must retain the public's trust. The way to do that is to distort nothing, to put the best face on nothing, to try to manipulate no one." For a politician is only thinking about the next election, but a patriot is concerned about the next generation. I'm deeply concerned about our children, grandparents, and all people who will be affected by this ordinance in St. Croix County. If this ordinance is voted in, your rights and your voice will be silenced. Thank you, and God bless America.
All right, the next online speaker we have is Trent Shug.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Trent Shug. I own 2 restaurants in St. Croix County. I employ roughly 40 people between the 2. This year, overall, has been a struggle to keep my businesses alive. We were on pace to have our best year before we were shut down. We've done what we can to adapt to the overreaching restrictions that have been put in place. We were only able to offer delivery and carry-out business for 2 months until the governor's illegal order was overruled. With patio season ending, I know I speak for many other owners when I say it's rough right now, and we do not want this. Our employees do not want this, and the vast majority of our customers do not want this. If you think a restaurant or bar can stay in business for long, operating at 25% capacity, you clearly have no understanding of our industry or business in general. There's no more PPP, there's no more grants. My businesses might be able to endure for a little while, but I know some that cannot, and mine cannot forever. Your ordinance will kill businesses, it will kill jobs, it very well could kill everything that I personally worked on building. However, what it won't do, it will not save lives. You as a board member do not have the power to stop the virus. We as a county do not have the power either. You have no proof that this overreaching ordinance will do anything to save lives, and you do not even have the resources to enforce it. Your job is to represent your constituents, not your personal beliefs or political agendas. Your constituents overwhelmingly do not want this passed. Be thankful that you don't have to potentially tell 40 people that they no longer have their jobs or livelihoods. Do the right thing, vote no. Keep your neighbors employed, do not infringe further on our personal liberties. We're not scared of this virus, and those who are scared or higher risk should act accordingly and gauge his or own personal risk. If this terrible ordinance should pass, this is my plea to fellow citizens and businesses. Do not be a sheep. Do not comply.
Back to the boardroom.
My name is Rick Mann, and I am the pastor of Calvary Assembly of God in Wilson. In 2007, we were planning on building a new church here in St. Croix County. The St. Croix County Planning and Zoning Department wanted to limit our days of occupancy to Sunday and Wednesday. If we had to have a funeral or a wedding on a different day, we had to get approval. We would be held to a 60 decibel noise limit at any exterior part of our property line. A lawnmower engine is more than 60 decibels. On and on these restrictions went. Ridiculous? Right. And this board agreed that it was ridiculous, and I am thankful. But now I believe that this ordinance is just as ridiculous. Businesses are not being restricted to days of the week, but number of people allowed in. That is just as bad. They will not be able to survive, and they deserve a fighting chance. By passing this ordinance, we will put a noose around their necks. The metrics on this ordinance is ridiculous also. They are unattainable numbers. An unelected person with power to enforce by citation or any other legal means will lead to an abuse of power which is concerning, because it appears to me that the departments in the St. Croix County have a history of overreach and trampling of individual rights. Already, Dr. McGinnis is on record of saying we have to control the people. I feel the Health Committee's homework is not well-rounded. They have only looked at how to restrict people. What about helping people through this? What about a person's mental health? This is only going to make matters worse for many. And as a pastor, I am very aware of the toll this is already taking place on people's emotional health. Do you want science? 11,000 plus so far epidemiologists and ID scientists from Harvard, Stanford, Oxford, etc. have aligned themselves together to stand against lockdown. They said we have grave concerns about the damaging physical and mental health impacts of the prevailing COVID-19 politics. So I encourage you to make a plan to help people. This is not a solution. It'll cause more harm than good. Look at the whole problem. America really is sitting on a precipice. Don't quarantine our Constitution.
All right, next up we have Kay Emerson.
One more applause and we're going to end this.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I am Kristen Emerson. I live in Hudson. I'm in favor of this ordinance, and I would be in favor of amendments that allow for larger fines and ticketing. The time is now to implement enforceable safety measures. In fact, we've waited too long. St. Croix County has had 569 cases in the last 6 days. There's not any evidence that tells us this is going away or even getting better. It only takes one look at the daily new cases on the data dashboard to know that this is rising exponentially. The misinformation being spread by a small group of uninformed, science-denying, gun-toting bullies is alarming at the least. What's more alarming is that the board has listened too patiently while this angry mob has literally screamed and pounded on the tables during public comment. This ignorance and tolerance of it is an embarrassment to our county. Sadly, the reluctance of this board to pass an ordinance thus far speaks to how effectively this anti-masking group manages with intimidation. Please put a stop to this nonsensical behavior. The big concerns I hear from anti-maskers are this is anti-business or this is government overreach and they will take your kids away. To the first concern, a mask ordinance is pro-business. If businesses are concerned about losing money with a mask ordinance, I'm guessing they won't like the effects of not having one during holiday shopping time. If shoppers don't feel safe, they won't go out. Businesses lose. It seems like the board is actively disregarding or at the very least underestimating the economic impact of the entire pro-mask population. Without an enforceable mask ordinance, you will be making the county welcome only to the anti-mask population. Anti-maskers will continue to run wild, as I've submitted in videos before to the board, without a care for how they might impact vulnerable people in our community. More people will get sick and less people will spend money locally instead turning to non-local delivery services. If you want to protect local businesses and keep people shopping, you need to make sure people feel safe.
Thank you, that's 2 minutes. Back to the boardroom.
Hello, board members. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. My name is Dr. Matt McCabe. I have been a healthcare practitioner in Hudson for almost 15 years. I spent half of my life studying how the human body works, how our environment interacts with our human body. And with 2 points tonight, I would like to tell you that the science that we are hearing that supports lockdowns and supports masks is bunk science. 2 years ago, if you would have said that masks help prevent viral spread, they would have laughed you out of the laboratory. 6 feet distance seems silly. The science that we are going off of right now is high school-based science with conclusions based on conjecture. It's bunk science, okay? That's 1 point, okay? I'm gonna make this quick. The second point I'd like to get across tonight is the effects of lockdowns. People have stressed this. I'm going to stress it again. One number I'm going to emphasize is 10 to 15 people. 10 to 15 people will unnecessarily die through deaths of despair for every point of unemployment that has risen in St. Croix County alone. So if estimated unemployment rates go up 5% or 5 points, 10 points, we're talking about 100 people that may die unnecessarily through murder, suicide, spousal abuse, child abuse, alcohol abuse, and drug abuse. Okay, do we want that on our conscience for shutting down a community because of a virus that, I'm sorry, we cannot stop? Masks will not stop it. 6 feet distance will not stop it. Okay, that is not how viruses work. That is not how coronaviruses work. That is not how respiratory viruses work. Ask yourself, is it worth it? Is shutting down a community, is limiting businesses, is creating unemployment worth other lives? The estimated lives we are trying to stop for this coronavirus might be at an additional 50. Is that worth possibly taking the life of another 200 over the course of another couple of years? I don't think so. Thank you.
All right, next up we have Rebecca B.
Good evening. I want to thank you guys for having this emergency meeting. I think it's very important. I do want to say that I support this as somebody that manages a business in Hudson. Excuse me, people do not want to shop in Hudson because not enough people are wearing masks. It's that simple. There's plenty of restaurants in town that have been thriving just doing carry out, so it can be done. But there are other small businesses that if they lose a couple of employees due to illness, they're not going to be able to keep the doors open. Plenty of small businesses will go under. If somebody gets sick, they'll just have to shut the doors. They can't carry on. So, and I mean, you can talk about people that might die because of whatever, so-and-so, depression, but how many people have already died? I mean, I think it's ridiculous, that assertion that people may die because of depression. So once again, thank you very much for doing this. Please vote yes so that we can keep our business open. Not only myself, but my daughter, my other daughter. We all work here in Hudson in small businesses. Have a good night.
And boardroom, you're up next.
Good afternoon, Board of St. Croix County. My name is John Adamick. I'm a local business owner that supports other business owners, not only here in Wisconsin, but in the entire Midwest. And those numbers that she gave you are absolutely bunk. That seems to be the word of the day. We support businesses, and I can tell you firsthand, I see their financials on over 300 accounts in the Midwest, and what it's done in Minnesota. We've probably lost 10% of our client base has been shut down because of these ordinances that you guys would like to impose on these business owners. It's costed the employment jobs of one of my buddy's companies. 300 employees are now out of a job because they decided to shut down their business or shut down their business and run to a carry-out only. To say that businesses are thriving on carry-out only is absolutely asinine. Furthermore, I'm a veteran that served in Iraq in the 82nd Army. I was shot, blown up in Iraq, wounded, helped some of my friends while they passed away. And I can tell you right now, Uncle Sam, George Washington, the founding fathers would be rolling over in their grave if they heard something like this passed. So I implore you to make the right decision. Let the people make the decision for themselves. We don't need you telling us how to live our lives. Thank you.
All right, next up we have Eat Healthy. Whenever you're ready, you'll have to unmute. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next one. Next up is Elise Molter.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for letting us speak today. Please vote no on the.
Oh,
Hello? Hello?
sorry. Yep.
Okay.
You lost me for a second.
Okay, please vote no on the local health ordinance. Abuse, control, and overreach come in all forms. We must stay aware. The government's goal or job is to serve and protect. Some examples are sharing information and facts, letting the people and businesses decide what to do with that information and their own bodies. I was watching a motivational speech today on struggle, and something stuck out all the way to my core today, and here's the quote. It is not what happens to us that defines us. It is what we choose to do with what happens to us that defines us. That was Elizabeth Smart. No matter what happens today, we all have two choices. What side of history do each one of you want to be on? Number one, control, abuse of power, and overreach, or two, liberty, freedom, and choice. Please vote no.
All right, back to the boardroom.
Hello, my name is Chris Spafford. I am the owner of a gym here in Hudson, Wisconsin, Midwest Health and Fitness. I've been a personal trainer for 16 years. I've owned the gym in Hudson for 7 years. It pretty much speaks for itself. I own a gym, and what's going on with gyms shutting down, let alone bars and restaurants, is absolutely crazy. Midwest Health and Fitness. I'm not just representing my gym, I'm representing all gyms in America right now, because there's not one thing and not one person that speaks about vitamin D, vitamin C, anything to help the immune system. It's all shut down, shut down, shut down. Anybody that knows anything about the immune system would be standing up and understanding, why are we not pushing any vitamins? Why are we not pushing any health and nutrition? We're pushing everybody locking down into their basement and just pretending that the dark is going to clear everything. Obviously, how the immune system works, you guys know this. And so, again, my job, and again, I own a gym, and I have 7 personal trainers that also work with me, and they would be right here behind me if they could. And I think everybody that goes to the gym understands that. That is what picks up our immune system. We need those antioxidants. We need that release. We need that endorphin release. And shutting us down and not letting us get that into our system is making this way worse. So again, I just wanted, it's short and sweet with me. I just think exceptionally wrong idea to be shutting down gyms, especially because the more that you're pushing stuff away from that, why is it always pills and vaccines instead of health and nutrition, things that we have access to now? It's always got to me. So I just wanted to make it short and sweet. So appreciate you guys.
Okay, we're gonna try the attendee with the name Eat Healthy again.
Hello, I just want to say I agree with what he just said, and that is the way we should be trying to beat this virus. Please vote no. Thank you.
And back to the boardroom.
Is this live? Hi, Dr. Jeremy Bischoff. I live here in Hudson. I've been a health practitioner now for 12 years. As of this week's numbers, I checked earlier today, St. Croix County, from death rate versus confirmed cases, we're still at 0.5%. I'm not standing at McDonald's slapping the Whopper out of somebody's hand because that Whopper's more likely to kill them than this virus is. I'm not taking their cigarettes at the gas station and throwing them in the garbage as soon as they buy them. We're setting up parameters with this ordinance that are unattainable. The numbers themselves encouraging testing with a test that's been shown to produce false positives at a high enough rate that without any virus present, you would have enough numbers to continue the ordinance. That's called stacking the deck. That's not science. Dr. McGinnis himself a few months ago said that the only way to get rid of this virus was through effective vaccination, to which the last time they made one for a virus of this type was a huge disaster. Either that or natural immunity. We should be encouraging natural immunity, not hindering it, when we have only a 0.5% death rate versus confirmed cases. That's Dr. McGinnis's own words. They have evaluated now quarantines and lockdowns, and they've found a 30 times greater life years lost due to lockdowns, due to the unintended deaths that you heard Dr. McCabe talk about as well. I implore you to vote no on this because the solution can't cause more deaths than what we're afraid of. Thank you.
All right, next up we have Steve. Steve, if you're trying to talk, you're muted. Okay, we're going to move on to Becky Yerk.
Okay, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for taking the time to listen. I don't have anything prepared, so I'm just going to kind of go off the cuff here. I've been listening to a lot of people. They talk about rights and freedoms and liberty, but no one's talked about the responsibility. I'm urging you, the board, to take the responsibility to vote yes, to protect us. I find the doctor's comments to be a bit troublesome, to say the least. And quite honestly, I do believe in Dr. Fauci and in science, I guess, most of all. Take the responsibility to listen to the healthcare professionals that tell us that 90% of the hospital beds in the cities and in Hudson are full. I hear low percentage numbers being thrown around, but then I look and I see that there's no hospital beds left. I urge you as a protector of your constituents to go ahead and please vote yes. Thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate it. Have a good evening.
And back to the boardroom.
I'm Sarah Bachman, and I'm yielding my time to another business owner here. Hi there, my name is Natalie Spaeth. I own the Snap Fitness in New Richmond, Wisconsin, and I just want to say I completely oppose this ordinance. I am a 28-year-old female. I've owned my business for 4.5 years. We are having one of the best months we've ever had being open with no restrictions. You guys try to shut us down, you're basically killing our American dream. So if you want to kill an American dream that I've been taught my entire life to build up, I hope that keeps you awake at night. So I'm in opposition of this, so I vote no. Thank you.
Okay. Next up online, we're gonna try Steve again. Steve, if you're there, please unmute. Okay, we're gonna move on to Rachel McCardle.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Rachel McCardle, and I live in Hudson with my husband and son. I oppose the COVID-19 communicable disease ordinance, and I ask that you as county supervisors stand with the majority of the public and oppose this ordinance. Going into this meeting, I want to suggest that you ask yourself the following. Can we guarantee this ordinance will minimize cases or deaths? Pierce County passed a very restrictive version of this ordinance. Have their numbers gone down? No. Is passing this ordinance worth losing the trust of the public? Scott Cox stated that he has personally drafted 6 ordinances. So is this really about our health, or is this just about passing any ordinance he can? If tonight you hear the science is settled, please pause and ask yourself, is the science ever really settled, Or is it ever changing and evolving? And should we always be questioning the science? If you as board members feel the need to take action, I urge that you do what is right by the community and think outside of this one-sided solution that the HHS subcommittee and board has brought forth. Give the public a say in their healthcare, their personal and business decisions. Please ask yourself, is passing this ordinance going to produce the results that you really want? Also, keep in mind that we're not here for fun. We're not here because this is something we want to do. We have been showing up month after month because this is important to our families, ourselves, our businesses, our communities. And you, by passing this, could kill those things. So please vote no and withdraw this ordinance indefinitely. Thank you.
Okay, County Boardroom, you're up.
I returned to this room for the first time in a year and a half after I served on this board for 7.5 years. 5.5 of those years as the chairman of the Public Protection Committee. I appreciate the job you all have in front of you, but I'm going to strongly stand up against this proposal. This is not a public protection issue. This is a public health issue. Right now, you're going to ask the County Sheriff's Department to enforce this. I want to remind each and every one of you that as a county board, the county sheriff only has one reason to report to you, and that is that he stays within his budget. You cannot ask him to enforce this. I'm also going to say this. Our county sheriff's department is severely underfunded. We currently have 4 people patrolling 722 square miles at any given time in this county. If we're going to ask them to take care of things like this, like going to people's houses and counting how many people are there for Thanksgiving, again, please think about the unintended consequences of an ordinance like this. Thank you.
Okay, public comment is closed at this time. We'll proceed on to the business items. And the item on the business for this evening is the ordinance creating Chapter 41, the St. Croix County Code of Ordinance entitled COVID-19 Communicable Disease Ordinance. So I have a motion to bring this to the floor. Supervisor Osnes.
I'll make a motion to bring it forward.
Do I have a second?
Second, Supervisor Leaf.
Okay, Supervisor Leaf seconds it. Open for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I would offer an amendment to this motion. I would offer an amendment to this Chapter 41. Two of them.
If you would hold one, Supervisor Osnes had the floor first. I'll give it to him. Supervisor Osnes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to give board members and folks that are watching and folks here at home just a little bit of a background information on how we got to this point. Back in August, we appointed a subcommittee to take a look at a possible ordinance and how we can better communicate and educate our general public. And on September 8th, the subcommittee recommended that the HHS board consider version 3 of the communicable disease ordinance at its September 16th meeting. That meeting was canceled, and on September 29th, the HHS board met and we discussed budget items only. There was no discussion on the ordinance. I would like to let folks know at that time the subcommittee looked at 3 separate ordinances, and we're looking at version number 3 to come forward. On October 7th, a digital town hall was provided, and we did that at the request of a number of town residents that asked if we could have a question and answer period along with public comment. That lasted for 2.5 hours. On October 14th, after the discussion, the HHS subcommittee voted to postpone indefinitely their recommendation of version 3 of the communicable disease ordinance for consideration by the HHS board, and that died that night. On October 21st, during the request for future agenda items portion of the HHS board meeting, a request was made to put a version of the communicable disease ordinance on the agenda for the next HHS board meeting, and it was a complete separate version of ordinance number 3 and 2 and 1. And on November 11th, the Health and Human Services Board recommended an amended ordinance to the full county board for consideration, and the amendments included adding an expiration date of January 31st, 2020. And that's how we are where we're at right now, Mr. Chairman. And if you don't mind, if it's all right with you, I would ask Mr. Cox if you could help us out on the drafting of the ordinance and where we're at right now.
Have to unmute. So the chair of the HHS board captured kind of the history. The purpose behind this ordinance, or the general nature of this ordinance, is to address some of the complaints that were heard by the public in terms of the prior ordinance drafts being quite vague in terms of what possible powers the local health officer could have if that discretion was essentially unfettered. So what this ordinance does is prescribe when an enforceable countywide ordinance could be issued, and what that ordinance could be to the max, or what that order could be to the maximum level of restriction. So if you look through the ordinance and you come to section 4105, that section prescribes how this ordinance would be essentially activated. If you pass the ordinance this evening as drafted, and I understand there may be some amendments, but if you pass it as drafted, essentially the ordinance authorizes the local health officer to issue two types of enforceable countywide orders. Number one is the wearing of masks, and number two is the limitation on public gatherings. What triggers that is a accepted metric by the Harvard Global Health Institute, the path to zero. And that metric would be 25 new daily cases per 100,000 people. And I think that comes out to approximately 22.3 cases per day on a 7-day rolling average. So that would trigger the ability for the local health officer to issue the order. And then she can decide, if that trigger is met, whether the orders enumerated and spelled out in section 4106 should be authorized. It doesn't require her to do that, but essentially the board has given pre-authorization to the local health officer to issue those orders. The ordinance also allows the health officer to issue orders of lesser restriction than those specified in 4106. If she decides to issue an order, that order would only be good for 14 days, and then that order could be renewed for successive 14-day periods if on the last day of the current order we still stayed in the red zone of 25 new daily cases per 100,000 people on a rolling 7-day average. So, and the specific orders that are allowed mirror the state mask order and the state order regarding public gatherings. So that's the basic framework of the ordinance, and I may have some further comments, but I think that's it for this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Ard, you had the next opportunity. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would offer an amendment to this document under 4106 by striking sub 1 and sub 2 under the public gathering limitation, and also striking the language under 41.07 under enforcement.
This is Supervisor Hall. I would second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to strike under, let's see, Cindy, would you repeat that for me, please?
I have an amendment under 41.06 to strike sub 1 and 2 under public gathering limitation, and under 4107 to strike the enforcement. Am I correct, Supervisor Ard?
That would be correct.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Supervisors, we do not have the ability in law enforcement or in public health to enforce this ordinance. We must depend on the residents and the business owners of St. Croix County to do what is in the best interest of everyone. For those of us who wear a mask, for those of us who sanitize every 4 hours at our places of business, for those of us who deal with vulnerable and high-risk populations, we see it every day. For a majority of the public, perhaps they do not. But we have intelligent, highly skilled, fabulous people in St. Croix County. This is the opportunity to place the belief in them. We have heard many speeches on freedom. We have heard many speeches on the Constitution. Now it is everyone's time to uphold those words by doing the right thing. Each individual in St. Croix County is not the enemy. The pandemic is our enemy. Supporting these amendments allows our businesses to continue operating. It allows persons to host family gatherings, to see those they want to see. But each of us has to bear the responsibility as well as the risk in the choices that we make. This runs until January 31st, 2021, if approved. In that amount of time, we will know if ourselves and the residents of St. Croix County have made the right decision. I urge you to support the amendments to this action.
Supervisor Achterhoff, you had your hand up.
Yeah. Man, there's just so many parts to this, but kind of, so if I understand it, this amendment only leaves in place the mask wearing. Is that correct?
With no fine.
With no fine. Why bother to do it?
Well, speaking as the seconder for the motion, here's what my thoughts are. First, I do understand from talking to other board members that there is not a effective enforcement mechanism that we can use. Secondly, I don't want this to become a citizen against citizen, tit for tat, calling in and tattling on somebody not wearing a mask. However, I also have heard from a lot of my constituents that we're, in their words, big boys and girls, and we can figure this out. Well, now it's time. I've heard a lot for 3 meetings and with lots of personal calls, lots of people talking about their rights. And as one of the callers said earlier, I want to start seeing people exercise their responsibilities. And I'm going to give them a chance, in my opinion, to step up and to do what is right and to do what they know in their heart is right to help their fellow citizens. If the rate goes up, I fully expect that we'll be talking about this again, and I would expect that we'd be looking at something even more severe. So I think it's incumbent on everybody to take this as a wake up. If we can't get this through, I really don't know what to say. So that's why I support this. I want to be on the record as being in favor of this and being in favor of people being responsible.
Thank you. And also, just for information, as per Robert's rules, I will allow each supervisor, if they wish, to speak twice on the issues. Next one I see, Supervisor.
Mr. Chair, okay, I had a bunch of questions. Can I put all those questions into one time or not?
Point of inquiry, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Burning.
Are we doing that for the amendments and for the resolution for the ordinance, or is it 2 times total?
No, it would be each time for each issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
That's correct.
So Supervisor Achterhoff, yeah, I'll let you have your questions at this time, and that'll take up one of your
Okay, but this isn't necessarily about the amendments, so I don't know if they fit in right.
Mr. Chair, Hoff's questions don't fit in with the amendment, which is basically limiting the public gathering and the enforcement provisions, that she be allowed to do that after this amendment has been taken care of, either for or against.
Supervisor Achterhoff, we'll get back to you. Supervisor Leaf, I see your hand up.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm opposed to the amendment because people have had the opportunity to show us their responsibility. There have been state mandates and guidelines. Public health has been pleading. Hospitals in our area are full. They've been pleading for us to follow basic guidelines. It's not happening. Our numbers are through the roof and only going to get worse. It's time for us to lead, and the way to do that is to have an enforceable ordinance. It has to have teeth, otherwise we're right back where we were before, and it shouldn't even pass. It seems ridiculous. It's time for us to lead, and I get it. People are frustrated. Business owners are frustrated, but it's a failure of leadership from the top on down, federal government to our Republican-led legislature. They aren't leading, so we need to lead. Our citizens, our hospitals are full, our citizens are dying needlessly, and if we just wait and do nothing, I mean, I don't even know how you can look yourself in the mirror, really.
I would, before the amendment, I agree with what Tim said. This is becoming so divisive, and the public health can't enforce these ordinances. The sheriff and dispatch will be inundated. I had a lady call me and she said every time she sees someone without a mask, she's going to call the sheriff. Well, this is not the way to do it. We need to work together, be kind, wear a mask, don't go into businesses if they don't have masks, and let's try this. The sheriff does not need this. Please support this.
Supervisor Anderson, Sean.
I'm in favor of taking out the enforceability of this amendment for the reasons previously said. There's also the understanding that the county just to our south has had a more restrictive version of this ordinance in place since the summer, and their numbers are going up at the same rate ours are. New York City is having it for, and I'm thankful a formal move to ask people to be to do what they think is best would be a good sign that we trust the public and help the public trust us again.
Supervisor Osnes.
Question for Mr. Cox. Taking these two issues out of the ordinance, what's left moving forward with the ordinance?
Unmute. You're muted, Corp Counsel Cox.
I accidentally muted myself rather than unmuted. My understanding of the amendments offered by Supervisor Ard is that it essentially becomes a mask advisory ordinance with no enforcement. And perhaps I can ask Supervisor Ard to clarify that not only in addition to just to clean up, and I'm looking at my other screen, C 1 and 2 would be eliminated, and also as a matter of logic or consistency, the limitation or the exceptions would be limited too. Is that correct, Supervisor Ard?
It would, under 4106, sub C, section 1 and 2, public gathering limitations, is what I am referring to.
And therefore, D would no longer be applicable and should be removed as well. Because they would no longer be.
Well, under D, you do have for K through 12 schools, Head Start programs, childcare, healthcare, and public health operations. K through 12 does not come under.
That all the exceptions wouldn't, there would no longer be need for an exception if you were limiting the, if you were eliminating the rules about public gatherings.
I don't believe that, because within sub 1, you have public gatherings are limited to no more than 25% of the total occupancy limits for a room or building as established by the local municipality. And in the condition of a school, would that not be the school board? And 2, for indoor spaces without occupancy limit for the room of that building that is established by the local municipality, such as a private residence, public gatherings are limited to no more than 10 people. I don't see that the public gathering limitation would necessarily affect exceptions to the public gathering limitation.
I guess all I'm saying, Supervisor Ard, that they would become moot because there would be no limitation as to public gatherings. I just bring that point forward.
I see, but I understand where you're coming from, but oh, good heavens. Sorry about that. Little technical difficulty here. Even though you have the exceptions to the public gathering limitation, I do believe that that language is relevant just as a point of information.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Supervisor Fiedler.
I think Mr. Cox was right in describing what Supervisor Ard was really trying to do. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but if we needed to have, I don't know if we can make a further amendment to do exactly what Corporate Counsel Cox suggested, plus such additional technical amendments as are required to effect what Supervisor Ard is trying to do. If that would, if that's acceptable, I would offer that amendment. And I think, Supervisor Ard, that does precisely what you're trying to do.
Supervisor Ard.
Pardon me, Supervisor Fiedler. Within the amendment, which are you referring to?
Well, I guess what Corporate Counsel Cox and I are saying is if you eliminate C, there's no need for D. And there's other technical amendments throughout the amendment that would also fall And without going through all of what those would be, I just suggest that such other technical amendments be authorized for Mr. Cox to take out in any final drafting of an ordinance, should an ordinance pass. But we don't need D if we don't have C.
Yes, pardon me, Supervisor Fiedler and Corp Counsel Cox, I do see what you are saying within that, and I would agree to that in removing sub D.
Mr. Chair, in response to Supervisor Fiedler, I think there would be some minor technical language changes to that would be necessary to achieve the objective. But I think you're correct, Supervisor Fiedler, that any such technical changes would be non-substantive in nature.
Further discussion? Supervisor Achterhoff?
Yeah, this will be my one time talking about the amendment. It's that we're going to go through this, make a whole bunch of amendments. Some of us are not even going to know what the heck we're doing and what we're voting for, because this has happened before. So I hate to say it, but I almost think this should be thrown back and we should look at it so that when it is brought forward, maybe we should have a work session to discuss it and get it down and then vote on it, because it's going to be a mess the way I see it right now. But that's my comments.
Second. Is that a motion?
Was that a motion from you, Supervisor
You already have one motion
Sorry.
and an amendment
Make
and an
another
amendment
motion.
to the amendment on the floor. You can't have another main motion on the
Right.
floor when you have one and two
Correct.
amendments.
Yeah, I accept that, yes. So we're still on the suggested amendment discussion. So any further discussion on that? Supervisor Cook?
Point of inquiry, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I believe a motion can be made to what Judy said, to postpone to a time certain.
Corporate Counsel Scott Cox. I think that isn't the order of Robert's rules, one motion on the floor, an amendment can be on the floor, but you can't have two main, you have to vote one down and then you could propose another. I don't think you can have two on the floor at the same time.
Corp Counsel, please.
I think you're going to have to take care of this amendment before you postpone indefinitely the ordinance.
Okay, so at this time then, further discussion on the proposed amendment. Supervisor Cook.
Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Over the past few months, I've had the opportunity to hear from citizens from across our county regarding their concerns about COVID-19, its impact on families and businesses, and their thoughts about the various ordinances the county has been considering. Regardless of the perspective, one thing that's consistent is the passion behind the positions. While it may seem at times that there is a gulf between viewpoints, I think that there's something significant that we all share in common, and that's the desire to return back to our pre-COVID-19 lives. Of course, how we get there is where we often disagree. When I was elected to this position, I committed to representing citizens in my district, whether they voted for me or not, and also to make decisions that are in the best interest of the county as a whole. This has been and will continue to be my goal in the future. We need to work together to reduce its effects so kids can get back to school, people can get back to work, our healthcare systems can provide full services again, and we can once again enjoy all of the amazing things that make St. Croix County so wonderful. But I do not think that this ordinance before us is going to get us there. There are many struggling businesses that have spent significant resources to follow CDC and county advisory recommendations to make interactions with the public and for their employees safe. To implement a blanket application of a 25% capacity limit that is in the proposed ordinance seems wrong to me. There are also many citizens already wearing masks in public on an ongoing basis. If the goal is to increase mask wearing by those who aren't doing so already, I do not believe the ordinance will result in significant additional compliance. Individuals must have buy-in and see the value of making change in their behavior if that's what we're looking to happen. There are also known challenges around enforcement that have already been mentioned, and our enforcement options, since it is my understanding that the county sheriff has indicated he will not enforce the ordinance, and our public health staff are already working beyond capacity. Even before this responsibility of enforcement that this ordinance would place on them, I do not see the value of passing an ordinance that will likely be unable to be enforced, as it will create unrealistic expectations to those who support it and unnecessary anger for those who oppose its stated consequences. Finally, I think the ordinance faces challenges from a process standpoint by delegating the determination on when and how to take these actions to our public health officer. I have full respect for and gratitude for the work that Kelly and her staff have done to this point. In fact, I think that we as a board should be looking into ways to provide them with additional resources so they can reduce notification times for positive COVID cases in our community as one way to help reduce the spread. I support this amendment.
Supervisor Shatner, you had your hand up before.
Well, she pretty much said it all. I think this weakens the original ordinance, and I'm in favor of that, so I will vote in favor of the amendment, but I'm opposed to the ordinance as a whole.
Thank you. Supervisor Hall.
I just want to be clear that this to me is the best of two not very good choices that we're presented with. I do feel like that there has been a great deal of organized noise about COVID and, that this is going to ruin our businesses. I can tell you that my concern is down the road. If we don't take some sort of effective action, and maybe it's not this ordinance, but if we don't do something as a community, someone will step in and do it for us at the federal or the state level. So this is your best chance to have local control over this decision. I personally don't like the occupancy, and I have no problem with that going away as long as social distancing and masks are worn. I personally think that the fact that we can't enforce is a problem with our county system. If we don't have the means to enforce ordinances that we promulgate, then there's something wrong and we need to address that. But I will bow to reality today. And so that's why, again, I will support what I view as a dilution of a good idea. And on the flip side, I do want to recognize and thank the people who have contributed their opinions and ideas. It's a better ordinance forward. And I think there needs to be more community involvement, building the solution and in the immediate future. So at some point, Mr. Chair, I would like to have that added to an agenda to have some mechanism to continue this process, citizens, and for the vulnerable in this county. And then with that, that's my 2 says, and I'm done.
Chairman, I don't think I've spoken twice to this, have I?
Supervisor Leaf.
I ask all of you, what are we going to do then? If we have this ordinance that basically has no teeth, people have said they're not going to comply, what are we going to do? Our hospitals are full. We have a responsibility, someone spoke of it, to our citizens and to our staff at the county level, to public health, all of us. What are you guys willing to do then? I guess that's just an open-ended question, but we have to start somewhere and we have to lead. And I just don't understand. I just don't understand like why the opposition. I mean, clearly we have a disease here and it's not going away. We're headed into winter and flu season. We're already maxed out. What are we going to do then?
Supervisor Fiedler.
Mr. Chairman, just in response to the remarks that were just made by Supervisor Leaf, I associate myself so much with just about every remark that's been made by all the supervisors and so many of the people that spoke in public. There is a big problem, and we should be doing something. We may tonight come to the conclusion that what was proposed is not what we're going to do. I'm afraid it happened at the last minute, but as I was thinking about this afternoon, I did propose, or did conceive of, two different approaches that would address what Supervisor Leaf just said. What are we going to do? And I think we should do a lot, and there's a lot of positive things we can do, but they don't involve mandatory limiting of gatherings, and they don't involve mandatory masks. But there's tons of other things we can do. And to that end, I wrote, and I've circulated to everybody, it happened late, and I'm sorry for that, but I didn't have the idea till late, a resolution that would suggest a number of things that we could do that are positive. They're based on education and communication and input from various groups and other things. We're already in an emergency declaration, and we can do a lot of things. But but it appears we're not going to do them. My proposals was in the form of a resolution. One was in the form of an ordinance, a tough word, but it had nothing to do with masks and gatherings. It has everything to do with many other things. And my only concern is parliamentarily, when would it be appropriate to raise them, if at all, tonight, or to not raise them and have them come up as in the next order of business in some fashion. But it would be so nice if we were to vote this down tonight that we also do something positive to show the citizens of St. Croix County that we are aware of the problem and prepared to act. And so everybody's got the text of those things. I'm not offering them now, but after we've done away with this amendment, I think from what I've heard, it's going to be accepted. I'll just seek the chairman's guidance on whether we should proceed with a positive amendment or whether we should wait.
Sure put me in the spot. Just kidding. That's probably more of a procedural question, and I guess I'll submit to Corp Counsel Cox. Do we want to clean this up first, Corp Counsel, and then discuss his proposal?
I would suggest.
So how I'm viewing that, and I did have an opportunity to read his ordinance. Admittedly, I did not read the resolutions, but I think what you're going to have to do is take care of this amendment. And then there's a possibility that you could move to substitute the current ordinance pending for the ordinance proposed by Supervisor Fiedler, but only if this amendment is taken care of first.
Thank you.
So there has to be a vote on this amendment.
Okay, I think Supervisor Tino has his hand in the air.
Yes, let's take care of this amendment that's to the ordinance, and then let's vote on the ordinance before we bring in anything new to replace the ordinance. Please, that's ridiculous. Thank you.
So, I mean, the Corporation Counsel can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but if the ordinance is voted down, which I think Supervisor Tino was just suggesting could occur, then Supervisor Fiedler could introduce the substitution at that point also.
Well, let's take care of the amendment first, and then we'll worry about that. That's my advice.
Okay, any further discussion on the amendment as proposed? Supervisor Telgen?
Yeah, if we don't have some teeth in this, again, I agree with Ms. Leaf that what's the point? I possibly could live with doing away with the 25% and so forth, but I still think we need to do something similar formula, maybe. I don't know. This has been a different. I was elected by all the voters in District 14, and I ran as a lifelong resident for St. Croix County. I'm a small business owner and a person who listens and is involved in my communities. But I believe in the science and what the experts are recommending. And if we could be more aggressive, could have been more aggressive earlier, I don't believe we'd be where we are today. The number of cases rising and the death toll increasing, and just listening to the numbers tonight on the news for for Wisconsin, it's amazing. It isn't always the loudest that get our attention. Sometimes you have to listen to the whispers, the timid, the quiet. So I've been listening, and I think we need to be leaders and be proactive in fighting this terrible virus. I don't want to be responsible for needless pain, suffering, and death if these simple rules will prevent it. If I'm wrong, I'll be the first to admit it. When the governor's orders were struck down, our state leaders said a more local approach was needed. That's exactly what this is, a local approach by local leaders. I urge my fellow supervisors to vote for this ordinance or a good variation of it.
Further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, Cindy, would you kindly repeat the proposed amendment before we have a vote? And we will have a roll call vote on this, please.
Well, I am a little bit confused, to be honest. I'm not certain there was discussion regarding C and D, and I'm not sure if that was the original part of the amendment.
Mr.
I
Chairman.
think it was my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Corp Counsel, C and D would both be eliminated in this amendment, as well as the 4107 enforcement.
Well, Mr. Chair, the movement, Supervisor Ard, I think, conceded that. So if there's unanimous consent that amendment can be modified, I think that's the case. So I think you should ask the body if there's first of all, if Supervisor Ard agrees, and then if there's unanimous consent, the amendment can be modified to eliminate both C and D, and then 4107, the enforcement provision.
Yes, Corp Counsel and Mr. Chairman, I did concede that subsection D, exceptions to public gathering limitations, would be included within this amendment, which would strike 41.06, section C, sub 1 and 2, and section 41.07, enforcement.
And does anyone from the body object to that?
Yeah, waiting for anybody from the body objecting to this. Supervisor,
Scott, I'm going to go back to the same question. If we're going to eliminate all of those, what's the point of moving forward with this ordinance?
Well, and my answer, I think it still should be the same. It simply becomes an advisory as to wearing masks. And the board can decide itself whether that's an appropriate policy decision or not.
seeing no objections, then we will vote on this amendment, and it will be a roll call vote. Cindy, please.
Schachner?
Yes.
Sean Anderson?
Yes.
Bob Long?
Yes.
Kathy Leaf? Kara Cook?
Yes.
Tim Hall?
Yes.
Paul Burning?
Yes.
Rick Otino?
Yes.
Bob Fiedler?
Yes.
Dave Osnes?
No.
Scotty Yard?
Yes.
Greg Telejohn?
No.
Dave Peterson?
Yes.
Paulette Anderson?
Yes.
Judy Achterhoff?
No.
Shelley Tomschick?
No.
Bill Peavy?
Yes.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 13, 6. Amendment passes.
The motion carries and the amendment is in. So now we're back to the main motion. Further discussion on that? Super.
Sorry, I hate turning my back on everyone. First I want to say, I want to thank everyone that's made public comment, whether it's emails, phone calls, text messages, or being here in person to comment. Your input is really important, and I want you to know that. And I encourage you to continue providing that kind of feedback. Okay, so now we have basically an ordinance that is a mask ordinance that's not enforceable. Okay, so Wall Street Journal last week, I read that mask wearing is about 80% nationally. And then there was a Carnegie Mellon University study that did it by state, and Wisconsin was actually about 83%. So my question really is this ordinance going to do anything to improve that rate? Is it really going to have any measurable impact on mask wearing? Or what we're trying to do to improve and be careful on or improve our public health? And I guess I would say that I really don't believe it's going to. And I also would say that there would be one result of passing this ordinance, even though it's rather meaningless, but I think one of the results that we would see is that we're going to continue to see this kind of ugly divisiveness that we've all been experiencing the last couple months. And I think that really needs to end. So what I would really ask you is let's let cooler heads and common sense prevail. All right, let's put an end to this divisiveness right now and put the ordinance to bed. But more importantly, as Supervisor Fiedler has really been promoting, let's turn our resources and our energy toward more productive things that we can do to try to protect our public health. There's got to be things that we can do, education and a lot of the things that Bob and Supervisor Fiedler has been promoting that I agree with, to have a better result rather than a meaningless ordinance. There are things that we can do to protect our friends and our relatives and our neighbors and all the citizens of the counties. There's things that we can do to be leaders, but a meaningless ordinance doesn't do anything. So let's put it to bed. Let's move on. Let's talk about some of the more meaningful measures that we can take to try to protect public health and try to bring our community back together and work together as leaders and as a community toward things that we can all agree on. Thank you for listening.
Supervisor Leaf?
Thank you. The subcommittee for communications, that was the intent. We had virtual town halls, public comment, hours and hours of public comment. We have a PIO that's working tirelessly on communication. We have a meaningless ordinance now because you took out the teeth and you took out the pieces that would have made a difference. Masking and social distancing and limiting gatherings is proven science, and it does work. We can try to bring the people together. I'm all about communication, believe me. But I think it's a shame that we couldn't get this done for the citizens of St. Croix County, and it's really disappointing to me.
Supervisor Hall?
As the seconder of this motion, my intent was not, Mr. Long and Mr. Chair, to promulgate a useless ordinance. I feel strongly that this is an opportunity for people to actually put their money where their mouth is when they talk about personal responsibility. I do believe in the science. We are losing the equivalent of 3 plane crashes a day in the United States from COVID deaths. Masks work, distancing works, and when it comes to civility and divisiveness, it's coming from one direction. When I look at the emails I received, they were all civil except for the ones who were against this ordinance. So from that standpoint, I am not ready to say that both sides are bad here. This is a common issue that we all have to solve, and I agree strongly that we need to move forward as a community to make that happen. And I do not want this to stop at this point. The only reason I accepted and seconded this was the idea that we would be on record, even if it was only advisory, that something needs to be done. And if people take this as a pass, that we are not going to do anything, and that we are going to just let this burn through and kill 900 residents, I'm not okay with that. And I want everybody here to understand I'm not okay with that. And if necessary, if this keeps going and we have to come back and we have to put teeth in this, we better figure out a way to get people to enforce this, because I am tired of passive resistance working against the greater good of the citizens of this county. So that said, I would hope that everybody votes to pass this, whether it has teeth or not, because if we do nothing, I would rather that we had not voted at all.
Further comments? Supervisor Thompson.
I'd have to agree with a couple of the other supervisors. When there's not teeth, there's really not much there. Like, what's the purpose? We want to change behavior, and the way that behavior is changed is by telling somebody that there is some type of sanction. And that is how people, that the criminal justice system is aware by evidence-based decision-making factors, that the low-level people will get kicked out of the criminal justice system earlier by just saying, hey, stay away. And the threat of having that conviction on their record. The threat of $100 fine, if that's what it takes to make somebody wear a mask to go shopping, seems pretty low. That is off the table now, but I know that we all agree that we hate when other people make our health decisions for us. I absolutely get that. But this is during a pandemic time, and this is a very small thing that people are asking so that we can prevent as much spread as possible. I mean, we're not going to prevent pretty much devastation, I am sure. But our point is to try to prevent as much as we can. The death rate is not what's important. What's important, not only the death rate, but the hospital rate and where we can even get beds. The beds we have in St. Croix County aren't even ICU, and the ones that are over on the border are filling up. So those are concerns not just for people who may get COVID and end up there, but anybody who otherwise has health issues and has to end up there too. So I'm going to support something that has teeth. But I don't think that advisory has really cut it so far, because we all know that we've been asked repeatedly from multiple levels to just behave respectfully.
Supervisor Telejohn.
I don't know if this is addressed to Mr. Cox or not, but when we create ordinances that have a fine, who enforces them? Can't hear you.
Unmute.
Thank you. So typically, if it's a county ordinance, it's the county sheriff.
And if he doesn't do anything for us, then what?
So we have other ordinances where specific officials are designated as that can issue citations. And examples of those are the community health or the community development director, which is our planning and zoning department. She has the authority, and her designees have the authority to issue zoning citations, and that's done regularly. The public health officer and his or her designee has the authority to issue citations. So by ordinance, we can delegate who can issue a citation. And that's what we've done in this ordinance the provision that was removed, we said that the public health officer or designee could issue a citation. So it doesn't have to be a law enforcement officer.
So why were we worried about the sheriff's department then? Why can't the public health officer do the citation? I know they're stressed to the limit now, but or some designee.
I think that's the concern, is that, you know, from hearing from the people that have, is that they're at their limit, but it's not unlike other ordinances. We have other public health ordinances where they issue citations.
And I don't mean to have a discussion between you and me, but.
Sure.
Supervisor Hall, I believe you spoke twice already. Correct me if I'm wrong.
This would be speaking on a different proposed amendment to the ordinance now that this first amendment is off the books.
Okay, go ahead.
So I would propose that, you know, having listened to the other board members, other supervisors, I don't feel great about passing a toothless ordinance. And so what I do say is that it should be selective, and it should have some teeth. So I would propose the following, and that would be that for a rolling 14-day period starting next Monday, that we would monitor the rate of increase of COVID deaths in the county. And if the rate of increase of COVID deaths for a rolling 14-day period increases by more than 25%, that fines of $100 be levied against non-mask wearers, and then leave it at that. So right now we're sitting at a death rate of maybe an increase of 1 to 2 a day. So what I'm saying is the rate of increase. I'm looking for an exponential rise in the curve, and if we see that happening, and if we are not bending the curve down, because my critical concern here is overstressed healthcare workers and lack of beds. So the goal here is to turn the curve down, correct? We are not going to defeat COVID, but we are going to slow it so that we can keep people healthy when they do go hospital. So my goal here is to put in teeth that kick in if what we have proposed in our so-called toothless ordinance don't work, if people aren't following. I think that's one way to get teeth back in while still giving the people of this county a chance to prove that they can do the right thing. So I guess what I'm doing here is a hybrid. A warning citation or no action unless we start steeply taking off. And I'm using 25% because, you know, what I know of the exponential growth rate, that's something that if we are wearing masks and distancing should be achievable. And $100 is enough sting to make people think twice before they go out without a mask under those conditions. So I'm trying to listen to my fellow board members who are disappointed that their hard work has resulted in something that doesn't have teeth and modifying that. I still am in favor of not having the grouping ordinance portion of here, but I do want to put teeth into the mask enforcement.
Are you
So that was a very long way, but I can read it to you exactly as I have it written out.
Are you proposing that as an amendment?
I am.
Does anybody need clarification on that proposed before I ask if there is a second? Is there a second to the proposed amendment? The second is from Supervisor Osnes. We are now open for discussion. Supervisor Long.
Basically, the end result is you're pitting citizen against citizen. And it's going to cause nothing more than more divisiveness in our community. And that's exactly the opposite of what we need right now. We need positive, constructive measures to bring people together. And this amendment will do nothing but be destructive. And do you want your neighbors to pit each other against each other? I don't think so. I certainly don't. It's not going to work.
Further discussion, Supervisor Anderson.
I agree with Supervisor Long. And the reason the last amendment went is because there wasn't a way to enforce it. So how is this going to work? And it's only 14 days out, and that's not because all of a sudden everyone's going to start wearing masks. And certainly the public health officer does not have time to go out and do this. She doesn't have the time to even do the contact tracing that's needed. We're going to personal contact tracing now. We have to be positive, look for ways to get this divisiveness lessened, and convince everyone to wear masks, social distance, not have parties. Most of the contacts is coming from house parties. We can't do much about that, but encourage our friends and not go into businesses or friends' houses if invited. We have to be personally responsible and not expect the sheriff or Kelly to go out and ticket someone. I just think we got to get this divisiveness done. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I
Supervisor
address Ms. Anderson, Supervisor Anderson's concerns? We have a number of ordinances that are on the books for public health, including the fact that I have to wear a shirt and shoes when I go into a store. I have to be properly clothed if I'm outside for decency. I have to wear seatbelts. I am not allowed to smoke in a public building. All of those things have been through similar levels of contention and argument, and in hindsight, seem totally reasonable and rational now. What I'm asking is, I was going along with this with the intent that we get something on the books, but I think at this point, listening to Supervisor Long and others use this as a stepping stone to try and throw the whole thing out, I can't go with that. And I need to make sure that people understand that this is a serious thing. We're killing 1,000 people a day in this country. And the holy grail of not having a divisive community, that divisiveness comes from the people themselves. There's nothing we are, as a county board, are going to do to increase or decrease that, other than look out for their welfare. I think if you want to talk to your neighbors about why we vote for this, we do that. But we have a responsibility, as was pointed out by Supervisor Leaf, to make sure that we're doing things that are best for the community. I think wearing a mask is the very minimum that we can do as a courtesy to our neighbors. And why this should be a bone of contention for anybody is beyond me. And with that, I'm done speaking on this. I would hope that you would vote for this amendment because it does provide enough teeth. And the enforcement, again, if we can't figure out how to enforce our ordinances, we've got real problems.
Are there any other comments on this? Supervisor Burning?
I have a question for the clarification on this amendment. When it's a COVID death, is it a with COVID or a death from COVID? Also, are hospice cases, would they be counted in this amendment?
Hypothetically, Supervisor Burning and Mr. Chair, may I answer that?
You may.
If I walk into a nursing home and somebody has terminal Alzheimer's and is due to pass in a day, and I shoot them in the head, I will be charged with murder. So if you die of COVID and you have underlying conditions, you still died of COVID. So to my mind, any death that is directly attributed as cause of death to COVID is what I would count.
Thank you. I believe we're probably ready to vote on this amendment as proposed. Does anybody have an objection to a voice vote on this? Do they feel we need a roll call? I think.
Mr. Chairman, roll call, please.
Okay, roll call vote. Cindy, we'll proceed with the vote.
Can you go over exactly what this amendment is, please, before we vote?
May I read it to you, if that's helpful?
I should have Cindy read it because she's the one that's taking the minutes. So
Yes,
however
okay.
she reads it
Please.
is what we're going to be voting on.
Please, I'm still chair, I think, unless I've been voted out here. So go ahead, Ken. Would you try and explain this? And if they have a problem with the explanation, we'll go from there.
Yeah, I'll try to summarize my understanding of Supervisor Hall's motion, and I'll help Cindy then clarification in the minutes if need be. But it's basically it invokes the $100 fine provision of the ordinance if the rate of deaths over a 7-day average increased by 25%. That's the short version of that. Over a 14-day period? Okay, sorry.
Okay, everybody clear on the amendment? Go ahead with the roll call, Cindy.
No.
No.
Kathy Lee?
I can't, okay, now
I'm
I can
sorry.
hear you. Yes.
Tim Hall? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Kara Cook?
No.
Paul Burning?
No.
Rick Otino?
No.
Bob Fiedler?
No.
Dave Osnes? Scott Counter?
No.
Dan Hansen?
No.
Scotty Yard?
No.
Greg Telejohn?
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
Dave Peterson?
No.
Paulette Anderson?
No.
Judy Achterhoff?
No.
Shelley Tomschick?
Yes.
Bill Peavy?
No.
Ed Schockner?
No.
Okay.
We're back to the main motion as amended otherwise, and further discussion on that, or are we ready to vote at this time? Supervisor Burning?
So there's a lot of discussion about personal responsibility and us pushing personal responsibility on people, individual responsibility. That responsibility is up to us to execute that. That's part of the burden of having individual freedom and individual liberty. And I'll agree with my supervisors that have stated the case for that. But the problem is the trust factor that the bureaucracies from the federal government on down, our governor, the state legislature, DHS, HHS, the HHS board, public health. I mean, you guys are working with numbers that are changing so constantly. And then there are things that have been put in place that just have devastated people's lives. There's a lack of trust between the bureaucracies, the elected officials, and the constituents. That trust is, as you can see tonight, has eroded to the point where hundreds of people show up, email, call. That's a trust that for the most part, and from what I've always, for the most part, understood is you trust that your elected officials and the bureaucracies that they've put in place in government are doing what's right for the people. But a few months ago, Pierce County put a pretty similar ordinance into place. And this next part I want to get to is, Kelly, how have their numbers been down in Pierce County? Because my understanding is those numbers are pretty bad down there as well. Is that correct?
I don't know if may I address the board?
Yeah, I'm asking you, Kelly.
Go ahead.
Please.
Okay. Yep, so I will say that as far as Pierce County rates go, I don't have them here in front of me. I do know that the Pierce County Board did approve the ordinance back in June. And so far, I don't believe they have actually enacted any piece of it since then. So I can't really say whether or not it has helped the numbers, because I think there has been challenges for Pierce County to enact any piece of the ordinance. Again, I don't have anything in front of me, but we could absolutely get clarification on using that ordinance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that would be
Mr.
great.
Chair, can I provide some information on that point?
As long as it's not taking my time, yes.
Okay, so they did enact an ordinance authorizing enforceable orders, but they've never issued an enforceable order.
Okay, so from what I understand, I have family that lives in Pierce County, and I have friends that live in Pierce County, and their cases are going up. And that was, you said June of 2020? And anyway, June or July. So trust is a big thing. We have to earn the trust of the people back. There's no doubt about that. Like, I've heard that, and actually from a number of phone calls that I received, trust is a big factor, and that's why I put it in here, because they see these ever-changing wear a mask, don't wear a mask, social distance, 10 feet, 6 feet, 100 feet, football field, don't gather, don't have 10 people in your home. Private residence turns into a public residence. We don't have the trust of the people. We have to start working on getting that back. That includes not pushing for ordinances like this months ago and now today saying, we've been pushing for this because the hospitals are full. In my conversations with the president of Hudson Hospital and Clinics over the last few months, I've asked him repeatedly, please call me the moment that you need us to retreat as citizens. I will put a resolution in front of the board asking our citizens to retreat for the time frame that your hospitals need us to retreat to help you out. And I think if we approached it like that, rather than bringing a hammer, our residents would step up and say, you know what? You as a board have earned our trust. Our healthcare system is important to making sure that heart attacks are taken care of, procedures are taken care of, and we will retreat for our healthcare system again. They did it once, and now the 2 weeks of retreat have turned into weeks and weeks and months of assault on their ability to move around. People are afraid to speak up on this issue. It's just insane to me that that's the case. And that's my next point, is getting to members of the community being afraid to come and speak out on the issue because they feel like their industry is going to get targeted if this happens to pass. That's crazy to me. People should be able to come and speak freely on this, whether they're right or wrong, and not feel like they're going to have reprisals from bureaucracy. That's one of the things that's really upset me the most, is getting those phone calls and then they asking me, don't say my industry and don't say my name. That ticks me off. I mean, makes me mad. Whatever I can use. Okay. So we got a cease and desist order from like a bunch of letters and an email. I want to know what that's all about. Should we be worried about that? Is there anything to that? I don't know if Corp Counsel can speak to that, or I don't know. I got like 5 or 6 of them in my email.
Before he does that, Supervisor Bryan.
I'm not concerned about those letters.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So then I talked about trust. I talked about our people asking for this power, you know, whether it's Dr. McGinnis or Kelly or someone from anyone asking for power of the magnitude of the original ordinance that was proposed should never be granted that type of power. That is a lot of power to hand one person. And it shouldn't be, again, it should not be granted to anybody who is asking for it. I want to make I heard, put your money where your mouth is. Boy, I agree. If we're going to put our money where our mouth is, there are businesses out there dying. There are, and that's not, people aren't the only thing that are dying from this disease. People's livelihoods are dying from it. Their mental health is eroding from it. And a lot of us, I don't know, are we willing to put our money where our mouth is if an ordinance like this passes? Whether watered down, with teeth, with a sledgehammer, with jail time, obviously we can't pass that, but all I'm saying is the money where our mouth is, how much of our personal wealth are we willing to put on the line if we pass an ordinance like this and crush businesses and crush people's way of lives? And to my fellow supervisors, we have this authority. We have the authority to ask our residents of this county to step up and do the right things ourselves and not just hand it to one person or a couple of people. Why are we as supervisors willing to use Kelly, and that's a lot of burden for someone like Kelly to take on, or anyone from public health. Why are we hiding behind her and her department when we should make the decisions ourselves? If it's necessary, earn the trust of the people, and if we ask them to retreat, we ask them to retreat. I think this has been, I don't know if it's a waste of time would be the right idea, but I think we've gone about this the entirely wrong way. And to be here tonight and spend 2 hours of our time having hundreds of people worry about whether or not their civil rights are being violated, we've done this all completely the wrong way. We've wasted our residents' time having to keep an eye on us, and we should be the protectors of their rights and their liberties, and then we should also earn their trust again, so that when the time comes, and it's probably going to be when the time comes, fellow supervisors, because you're right, it's winter time. This is something that spreads, and it's a virus, and viruses like cold. We need to earn their trust so that when we ask them to help us out and help our healthcare system out, we've earned their trust so that they will do the right thing along with us. That's all I've got, Mr. Chair.
If you agree with Supervisor Burning, you can raise your hand, but do not applaud, please. Thank you.
Could I make a comment, please? Or have I spoken too many times? I can't keep track.
So Supervisor Burning, in answer to your question on Pierce County, totally unofficial, but I did look on the net the other day because I was wondering the same. And the data I saw is that their population is about half of ours, and so is their COVID cases. So I say that without judgment. Okay, any further? Supervisor Ard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Everyone is working very hard. Everyone is tired. We all know we're tired. What is left of this ordinance is a start. It is a building block. It is something to build upon with the community, with small business, with manufacturers, with the medical clinics, hospitals. We have to start somewhere because we didn't start soon enough in educating the communities, in educating residents, and in speaking plainly about what's happening. Passing this ordinance opens the door for those discussions to bring our county together. This has led to a very divisive end. We have families that have divided over this ordinance. We have businesses that truly are facing the greatest challenges of their life in trying to keep their doors open. More so, we have, as has been stated, a huge trust issue with our residents on all sides. This provides that first building block to bring this county together and to form a united front with everyone fighting for the same reason. We want a strong economy, we want healthy children, we want healthy adults, healthy families, and we want to be able to go forward. This ordinance will help us do that as a start. Supervisors, I ask you, please support this ordinance and open that door.
Supervisor Achterhoff?
Yeah, right. If we pass the ordinance the way it is now, it's absolutely no different than what the state is doing. They made the statement that they wanted, mass social distancing, and they can't enforce it. And that's exactly what this ordinance is now. And that even no matter what we do, we're not going to get everything that's going to please everybody. And that's something to keep in mind. And I'm just going to read one thing that I was going to read if we had done the ordinance, is that we stop at stoplights, at stop signs, hopefully put our kids in car seats, wear a seatbelt, wash your hands after using the bathroom, and in some states, wear a motorcycle helmet. Some of these are and were just common sense. Some became laws and presumably, quote, infringed, unquote, on your freedom of choice. But most of us have come to accept some of these infringements, i.e. seatbelts. Sometimes a bit of personal infringement on our rights, i.e. face masks, social distancing, is a small price to pay in comparison to the benefits of most. And it is our responsibility as supervisors to do what is best for our county. And man, at this point, I don't know how to do it, because even amongst us, we don't know. So I don't know if there should be and I'm going to forget the type of meeting where you can't make a decision, but there can be a discussion. So maybe we can all be on the same page as to somewhat how we want to do this and where we want to go, because boy, we're not doing it now. At least I don't see it. We're all over the place. And in my mind, it must look pretty ridiculous to a lot of the members of our community and our county.
Supervisor Burnham.
So this is my second and last statement on this particular subject. And I just want to say, the more that we mention taking away rights or maybe just infringing on people's rights, that's one more erosion of trust between us, our bureaucracies that manage the county, and our residents or our constituents. So we have to start by not using these draconian terms any longer and start reaching out to our residents and asking them, can you help us help you? Instead of us saying, well, we're going to pass this law because this one was passed or was put in place in the past, and this right was taken from you in the past, or this little bit of liberty was eroded. We're not going to heal anything, supervisors, if we use this terminology and we keep using it and we keep using it as an excuse to save lives or to save people. It's just, you're not going to get that trust back. When our residents see on social media, and you can believe whatever you want to believe, but when you see videos of churches a few months back of pastors being hauled away, being fined for having their congregation come out in the parking lot and have the windows down for a service, do you think the residents are going to question our every move? I think they are, and I think they deserve to do so. When you see businesses get shut down and life savings destroyed, you can't serve food, you can't have a retail shop, but Costco's open, Home Depot's open, Walmart's open, and we don't ever hear about that being contact traced back to them, and they get shut down. But the restaurants downtown do. They bow. And then we wonder why our local constituents call us. Let's stop using these draconian terms for draconian measures, and let's start talking to our residents about how they can cooperate with public health to make sure that our citizens are safe, that our most vulnerable are protected, and that the freedoms and liberties that we love and cherish so dearly are not eroded away for our future generations and the generation that is living here now. Just because Moses didn't see the promised land doesn't mean that we can't see it. We can balance this out. I have a philosophy that I live by in life. Well, I live by a few of them. One of them is, if it looks like a fish, if it tastes like a fish, and it smells like a fish, it's probably not chicken. And you know what? I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people that aren't smelling or tasting chicken right now. And I don't blame them. The next thing I live by is balance. Balance in life. Balance between doing what's best for others and doing what's best for yourself. I hopefully live that in my daily life in the private sector, and I try to bring that balance to the public sector. And let me tell you, I got family members right now that have COVID, and I've got some of the one person in our life, I'm sorry, we just lost a family member, not because of COVID, because of certain circumstances. And there's another person in our life that we were deathly afraid of getting COVID. Deathly afraid. Like even when we were taking pay cuts ourselves, my wife and I, and not having near the level of income, while a certain person in our life was not able to work because of the vulnerable state that she was in, we shelled money out to this person to keep her home, even amongst our pay cuts. That, my friends, that is selfless. That is being selfless. So I try to lead by example when it comes to fighting this COVID. There's numerous other examples that I could give you, not only of my life, but people that I know. But I can tell you that people care. People want to do what's right by others. And as long as you're not poking them in the eye and stomping on their foot, I think they're going to turn around and do the right thing. And I think we can earn the trust of these residents here. Those watching at home, I think we can earn their trust again. And I think it starts with us not threatening the hammer, but by extending an olive branch. I yield the rest of my time.
No applause in here, please. Let the record show that many hands are up in the back here. Further discussion.
I have one comment and then I'm done. If we're practicing personal responsibility and doing the right thing, how many of you are wearing masks in that room?
What's that?
Not as many. I think Hanson's next.
Supervisor Hanson.
Thank you. A lot of bold talk about making amends and bridging a gap. There's a lot of angry sounding talk about what supervisors should and ought to be. I think it's grandstanding, honestly. I'm quite disappointed, having spent 7 years on this board, that a committee fails to bring forward a workable resolution, and that supervisors have turned this into a social media frenzy, yielding me over 350 angry emails. This has been an utter failure, and I'm ashamed. This thing is toothless. It's worthless. I'll vote for it. We're not protecting the public. This is a virus. People are going to get sick. People are going to die at an alarming rate, and everybody knows it. I wonder if the president of Hudson Hospital is a signatory to the letter that we received from so many medical professionals in the St. Croix Valley. I suspect he is. I think when I got that letter, I became pretty well convinced that putting a face mask on is the idea behind preventing further spread at a rapid pace. Social distancing works. Science is really something that we ought to believe in. Turning to social media to learn what your neighbors are doing instead of turning to science to learn what the professionals recommend is leading you down the path of foolishness. It's leading you down the path of infection. I'm going to vote for this, even though it's toothless, even though it's an utter failure, and I'm very, very disappointed in our behavior this evening.
Supervisor Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I take somewhat of an issue with the fact that my failure to support this ordinance means that I don't support mask wearing, social distancing, or that I don't believe in science. All of those things I believe are important. And I also worry about overstrapped healthcare workers. My sister takes care of COVID patients on a daily basis. But I cannot support this ordinance for the reasons that I opposed the initial language of the ordinance as it relates to enforcement, our ability to enforce it, and the process to create it. I think it is in the best interest of our community, due to the polarization that it currently exists, that we as the elected board and legislative body of the county be clearly responsible for public policy decisions of this magnitude that impact our communities. Much of the opposition I have received regarding this ordinance has focused on concern over an unelected official being given the power to make policy decisions. I would suggest that if we as a board see a need to implement further action in the future, we should propose actions or ordinances with clear, specific language that directly defines the action to be taken and minimizes the burden of discretionary action on our county staff. I would like to see us all work together as a community to eliminate the negative impact on COVID on our lives, whether that's from a health issue or an economic issue. Let's move forward really to respect each other, each other's opinions, be willing to collaborate, and also to compromise.
Supervisor Long.
Thank you, Supervisor Cook. I totally agree with you. I just want to add one final comment. We talk about trust. I think the best way that we can begin to earn the public's trust back is to defeat this ordinance and turn our attention, as I said before, to other ways that we can help support the public and the public health and bring our community back together. We need their trust, and this is the best way we can do it, is to kill this and start over.
Supervisor Osmus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll go back to Mr. Burning's comment a little over an hour ago. Are we going on to his recommendation to postpone this, or no?
That wasn't mine.
Is that still
There
on the
was not a
floor? Is that
motion
still
brought
on the
because
floor?
there
I
was
guess is
another
the
motion on
question.
the
Are we
floor.
moving forward now as long as we've had enough conversation to that?
Ken, speak to that, please.
We've been spending the past few months talking about this ordinance, and I finally have it in front of the county board, so you can tell me what we should be doing with it, but what I can tell you is we've exhausted an enormous amount of time and energy from the staff that have worked on the ordinance, about communicating about the ordinance, instead of communicating about best practices that we should be doing with the pandemic. I would really prefer that you vote it up or you vote it down. Tell me what you want to do with the ordinance, and let's move on to other things that I need the staff to be working on.
So I'll keep this before the board and it's ready for a vote if I don't have further comment.
No, we are on the original ordinance now.
Yes.
Supervisor Achterhoff?
Yep. This is only my second time talking.
Yes, it is. Last.
Judy, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. This ordinance, as it is now, to my knowledge, is absolutely no different than what the governor has stated for the state of Wisconsin. So why bother to do the ordinance? It doesn't say anything different to my knowledge. Tell me if I'm wrong, Mr. Cox, but it's not stating anything that's not in the governor's ordinance or request. It doesn't have any teeth. So I don't know what the use of passing this is. And I know people have spent hundreds of hours, and that's why this is frustrating. And that's an understatement.
Mr. Chair, if I can answer her question.
Go ahead.
The advisory portion of the ordinance that's left mirrors what the state order is currently. I don't know that that's going to expire or not, but it does mirror what the state language is. Thank you.
Further discussion?
I don't see any.
Supervisor Counter, you have an end chance. Go ahead.
Well, I want to start out that this has been a very contentious issue, as I'm sure that all the supervisors here realize. It's continuously evolving, and we keep getting new details all the time as far as what's happening, how it's happening, And there's a lot of controversy on both sides as to what's right and what's wrong. I think my concerns are the ability to bring our community together and how we can create policy that's fair, equitable, and needed for all to support everyone in St. Croix County. We need to do first all we can to inform and educate. The high majority of our county residents, I believe, will comply. We will not magically get all residents to comply, whether a punitive ordinance is passed or not. We as a county board need to support our Health and Human Services Department with the tools they need to track cases, inform, and educate our residents, businesses, local governments, so they may make informed decisions and stay compliant with the concerns addressed with the St. Croix County Health and Human Services. I'm in agreement with Supervisor Fiedler's concept of creating a positive draft ordinance instead of negative. I believe in a carrot instead of a stick.
Further, is Osnes said too?
He is not.
Go ahead, Supervisor Osnes.
Just one quick comment, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind. To Kelly and your entire staff, we owe you a great deal of thank you, and we appreciate the good work that each and every one of you folks are doing for all 91,000 county residents. Our hats are off to you, and please keep up your great work. It is greatly appreciated, young lady. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'd call the question.
Okay, the question has been called, so I guess we'll proceed then with a roll call vote on the, just for clarification, Cindy, that we're on the original ordinance that was amended.
The amended, or as amended?
As amended.
Motion was made by Supervisor Osnes, second by Leaf.
Okay, so we'll proceed with the roll call vote. And if you vote no on this amendment, it fails. If you vote yes, it's up.
The motion.
Sorry, I'm confused. Are we voting on the amended ordinance, taking out the fines, or are we voting on a different amendment here? I'm lost again.
No, that we are voting on the, go ahead, Cindy.
It's the ordinance as it is amended, and that did
Okay.
take out, yes, okay.
Correct. Thank you.
All right.
That was actually seconded by Hall. I have to own that.
The original motion was made by Osnes and Leaf.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Are we ready to vote? You ready? Okay. Bob Long,
No.
Kathy Leaf,
Yes.
Kara Cook,
No.
Tim Hall,
Yes.
Paul Burning,
No.
Rick Otino,
No.
Bob Fiedler,
No.
Dave Osnes, Scott Counter,
No.
Dan Hansen,
Yes.
Scotty Yard,
Yes.
Greg Telejohn,
Yes.
Dave Peterson,
No.
Paulette Anderson,
Yes.
Judy Achterhoff,
Yes.
Shelley Tomschick. Is she there? I'm sorry. Shelley Tomschick?
Yes.
Was that a yes? Bill Peavy?
No.
Ed Schachner?
No.
Sean Anderson?
No.
9:10.
Could we hear that again, the result?
The result was 10 no and 9 yeses. The ordinance fails.
There's no other further business than we'll adjourn.
I don't think there is there?
Well, I don't know if Fiedler wanted to introduce
Oh,
his.
okay.
but-
If we have no further business at this time, we can adjourn. Seeing none, we're adjourned at 9:16.